Well, hello, everybody. I'm Zach Ewing, and welcome to the Caesar Superdome, where we are live for the Saints Insider post-game show after the New Orleans Saints 15-12 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles here in Week 3. The Saints fall to 2-1 on the season. A heartbreaker here. Saints had a 3-0 lead for almost the entire game, all the way into the fourth quarter. Fell behind 7-3, came back, took a 12-7 lead, and looked like they may have had the Eagles stop there on the final possession, but the Eagles come away with a big touchdown and win this one 15-12. And the Saints denied their first 3-0 start in 11 years. We are here live with you for the next 45 minutes or an hour or so. We'll have visits from the locker room from Jeff Duncan, Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, and Matt Paris, our columnists and beat writers. And we'll be with you. We'll show your comments and questions live on the air as well. Keep it clean, or we will delete the comment. But if you comment, we'll show it, and I will respond to as many as I can get to as well. 15-12. Look, heartbreaker for the Saints. I think, quite frankly, if the Saints had won this game, they would have kind of stolen it. Their offense was not efficient for basically the entire day until that one touchdown drive at the end. The defense gave up 460 yards. They gave up 2 key touchdown drives in the fourth quarter. The Saints were kind of hanging on thanks to some takeaways, a blocked punt. I mean, a lot of plays that honestly should have given them a bigger lead earlier in the game. They didn't get it, and then they weren't able to make the key plays at the end. Dallas Goedert with the 61-yard catch and run on 3rd and 16 with just over a minute left, obviously the key play in this one. And then on the next play after a timeout, Saquon Barkley, a 4-yard touchdown run. Saints did have, I think it was a minute and a second left and a timeout to try to get the field goal to tie the game. After they gave up the 2-point conversion as well. But on the second play of that drive, Derek Carr hit as he throws. The pass wobbles over the middle, and it's intercepted. And the drive ended right there. The game ended right there. The Eagles win it 15-12. I want to let you know this season's Saints post-game coverage is brought to you by Tulane Doctors, now at East Jefferson General Hospital. Tulane Doctors are bringing academic medicine to more patients in new communities. Look for the shield to know the future of medicine is here. Call 504-988-5000 to schedule with any Tulane doctor or visit tulanedoctors.com. Saints Insider postgame show. We're rolling right along here at the Superdome. Saints lose for the first time this year, 15-12 to the Philadelphia Eagles. Quite a bit different, obviously, from their first 2 weeks, which were a 37-point win over the Carolina Panthers here in Week 1, and then a 25-point win over the Dallas Cowboys last week in Texas. What a difference 7 days makes. The Saints did score on their opening drive for the 3rd consecutive week. This time it was just a field goal, but it still looked like things were going okay. Blake Grupe doinked in that field goal, actually, and those were the only points of the game for 3 quarters. The downside on that first drive was that Eric McCoy left with a groin injury on, I want to say, the 3rd play of the game. And without Eric McCoy, who might be the NFL's best center, who is the highest graded offensive lineman in the league per Pro Football Focus through the first 2 weeks of the season. Without Eric McCoy, you could just see immediately the Eagles getting pressure up the middle. Jalen Carter, their big defensive tackle, causing havoc. He got a sack. He also knocked down a couple of Derek Carr passes early. And that just made things so much more difficult on the Saints. Also didn't help them that they didn't have Taysom Hill. A lot of short yardage situations where you either give the ball to Taysom or use him as the lead blocker. He wasn't available. And the Saints struggled in short yardage situations. And quite frankly, that offense did nothing after that opening drive for 3 quarters. They had 54 yards on 15 plays in the opening drive. It took more than 8 minutes off the clock. And then the rest of the first, second, and third quarters combined, the Saints gained just 44 yards. So leave your comments if you see them. If Spencer sees one to respond to, he'll send it to me, and I'll be able to respond to it. Spencer Urquhart is backstage for us, and just a tough one to react to. I think bottom line, the Saints are still 2-1 after 3 games. I think every single Whodat and Whodat Nation would have taken that after 3 games, looking at the fact that you play the Cowboys and Eagles in those first 3 weeks. But it sets up a mighty big game in Atlanta next week, and we'll talk about that too. Saints, if they lose that one, all of a sudden you're 2-2, going to Kansas City the following week, Tampa Bay at home the week after that on a short week. I mean, just a tall task. So it sets up a mighty big game in Atlanta, and that's what the focus for the next week will be. Focus on this one, again, Saints lose it 15-12. Honestly, despite everything that went wrong, despite all of the offensive trouble and the defense bending a lot, but not only really breaking once in those first 3.5 quarters on a long Saquon Barkley touchdown run. Despite all of that, the Saints had a 12-7 lead, less than a minute and a half to go. Eagles had third down and 16. It was a sack from Brian Bresee of Jalen Hurts, and then an incomplete pass. Was 3rd and 16. I think like a minute 16 to go, and just 2 timeouts for the Eagles. And so, honestly, you just stop them twice from getting 16 yards, and you win that game. But instead, Dallas Goedert leaks out to the left side. Eagles ran a lot of action to the right side of the play, and I'd have to go back and look at the tape. I did not see who blew the assignment there, but obviously some linebacker or safety or corner was supposed to follow Dallas Goedert as he leaked out to the left. They didn't do it. Goddard caught the ball, really only like 8 to 10 yards downfield. If there had been someone there to tackle him, it'd have been like 4th and 8, 4th and 6, and the Saints still would have had a chance to win the game. Instead, Goddard had nothing but green grass in front of him. He just rumbled all the way down the sideline before the Saints finally got over from the other side of the field and tackled him out of bounds at the 4-yard line. And one play later, Saquon Barkley had his second touchdown of the game, and the Eagles got a 2-point conversion and get themselves a 15-12 victory. Daniel says, never turned down points, should have kicked the field goal. That change of possession produced a touchdown. Saints made that field goal. It would have been 9-0. I think you're talking about early in the first play of the fourth quarter. Actually, a field goal would have made it 6-0 for the Saints. It was 3-0. And they went for it on 4th and 1 on the first play of the fourth quarter. And I got to tell you, I see where you're coming from, Daniel. My point of view, I turned to Rod Walker in the press box and I said I like the call by Dennis Allen to go ahead and go for it there. Because if you can score a touchdown, take a couple more minutes off the clock, all of a sudden it's 10-0 with the way your defense is playing. You feel really good about that. In hindsight, clearly the 3 points were costly. But I'll tell you this, if the Eagles had lost, there would have been a lot of screaming and bellyaching from Philadelphia about Nick Sirianni turning down points. Nick Sirianni went for it on 4th down a couple of times, including one at the end of the first half that made 0 sense to me on like a tush-push play where they then handed it to Barkley out of the backfield, and Pete Werner and Chase Young made a real good play to stuff him. But even if they had gotten that one, there was only like 10 seconds left in the half. Going for it on 4th down, not worth the risk for one shot at the end zone, in my opinion, and so they should have taken the points there. Went for it again in the second half. And then Nick Sirianni he tried a 60-yard field goal in the fourth quarter that missed and set the Saints up for their touchdown drive that gave him the lead there at the end of the game. So Nick Sirianni made some curious decisions. Dennis Allen, in hindsight, boy, you'd love to have those 3 points, but given the situation, I didn't hate that call. Dustin Young, not the defense's fault, not even close. Looks like last year's offense. Yeah, it did. It did look like last year's offense. That thought occurred to me too. I will say the defense, they got the 2 takeaways. They got the forced fumble on a strip sack of Jalen Hurts. Tyrann Mathieu got a pick in the end zone. And the special teams blocked a punt, and the offense has to take advantage of those. They got 0 points off of those 2 turnovers in the block punt. So that is a big deal. I do blame the defense a bit in the fourth quarter. You're in a tight game like that. The one thing you can't do is allow busts, and they allowed 2 big ones. 65 yards to Saquon Barkley on a touchdown run, 61 yards to Dallas Goedert on obviously the play of the game there with less than 2 minutes to play. So, look, it's a team game. The offense looked great the first 2 weeks. Defense looked pretty good. Today, the offense wasn't very good. Defense, they were very good for 3 quarters. I don't think they were quite as good as the scoreboard would show. The Eagles were moving the ball. They had 300 yards of offense through 3 quarters, but just no points to show for it. Eagles ended up with 460 yards of offense. So you can't say the defense was dominant or anything like that. Hey, we're going to take a break. We'll take more of your comments as we continue to recap the Saints' 15-12 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles here in Week 3 at the Caesars Superdome. We'll be back after this break.
Your trusted Tulane doctors are now at East Jefferson General Hospital. Within these walls, you'll find our region's leaders in academic medicine, where state-of-the-art facilities house the innovation powered by Tulane Medicine, where collaborative care and compassion meet, and where our commitment to patient outcomes means a healthier future for our community. Tulane doctors at East Jeff. When you see the shield, you'll know. The future of medicine is here.
Fellas, it's clear why Caesar's brought us together. This is the ultimate quarterback roundtable.
I think I know why we're here.
What? Quarterback, high school, Oklahoma? I thought that was a musical.
Garth, I think you're here because when people use Caesar's Sportsbook, they earn with Caesar's rewards. Things like celebrity chef dining, Vegas vacations, even tickets to your show.
This app is over the top. There's the idea.
Bet with Caesar's Sportsbook. Earn Caesar's rewards and see your favorite quarterback, Garth Brooks, in concert.
Hey, you can't throw like that.
All right, welcome back to the Saints Insider post-game show here at the Caesars Superdome. A lot of stuff going on behind me here. Got some security guards very loudly rehashing the game and talking about what the Saints should have or should not have done there in that fourth quarter. So a frustrating loss for the Saints and for their fans, of course, here at the Superdome. I mean, it was fun. The Superdome was back. It was back in a way I haven't seen it since Halloween of 2021 when Jameis Winston we got hurt in that game. It was a Halloween game against the Bucs. The Saints won that game. That was the last time I really remember the Superdome being this crazy loud. Now, I will say there were a lot of Philadelphia Eagles fans in here too, and they made quite a bit of noise when the Eagles were playing well, when the Eagles were on defense. That may be a product of quite frankly, in the offseason, ticket sales probably were not real brisk for Saints fans, and so Eagles fans may have scooped up a lot of those tickets. And then in the past week, when Saints fans tried to get back in, there were already a lot of Eagles fans with this trip booked. So, question from Collins Bean. How concerned are you with losing McCoy for any extended period of time? That has to be a concern for the Saints. It was a groin injury. He was listed originally as questionable, was downgraded to out pretty quickly. I believe Eric McCoy was out 4 or 5 weeks with a groin injury last year. That's it. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's super serious, but for an offensive lineman, you're always down in the crouch. That those pulled groins. We don't know how bad it is. We don't know the extent of it, but yeah, I don't think you can count on Eric McCoy playing the next week, maybe the next 2 weeks. I don't, maybe longer than that. It's hard to say until we get an update from Dennis Allen. We'll see if the guys in the locker room get any word on that. But yeah, Eric McCoy, our producer, our cameraman Norman Bell made a good point during the break. Like, not only is he the guy on the interior of that offensive line, and you saw the Eagles immediately get pressure on the interior after he went out, but he's also setting protections. He's also calling shifts and different plays and things like that. He's helping Derek Carr set that offense up based on what the defense is showing. And so what the Saints did is they moved Lucas Patrick over from left guard to play center, and then they put in Oli Udoh to take over for Patrick at left guard. And that's the other part of that. Lucas Patrick was one of the NFL's best guards through 2 weeks. He was the highest rated player in the NFL for week 2 for his performance in Dallas. And so when McCoy goes out, you downgraded at 2 spots. You downgraded at center. You also downgraded at left guard. And Taysom Hill being out also. The short yardage was a concern. Look at some stats. The Saints did not run the ball nearly as effectively. They ran the ball for 89 yards on 29 carries. That's 3.1 yards per carry. They were well over 5 each of the first 2 weeks, and that's even with a bunch of garbage time dragging that total down. Passing the ball, the Saints were 14 of 25. They had Derek Carr at 142 yards passing. There was one 12-yard sack, so the Saints finished with 130 passing yards. They had only 12 first downs. Just a tough thing. They did have the one turnover late in the game. Carr finished 14 of 25, 142 yards, just 5.7 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, a rating of only 69.1, by far his worst performance through the first 3 weeks. Alvin Kamara carried the ball 26 times. He had 87 yards. He did have a couple of nice runs. I still say the rushing offense looked better than it did last year. He busted a 16-yarder, a couple of 9-yarders. You didn't see that at all hardly last year. And so, I'm not totally discouraged by that given the offensive line problems, but the Saints just couldn't get it going, especially in short yardage. Chris Olave had a great day, 6 receptions, 86 yards, And, of course, the touchdown. We can talk about that touchdown because if the Saints win this game, Chris Olave is the hero. Derek Carr, it was a corner route in the end zone. Derek Carr might have overthrown him just by a touch, but Olave able to drag that left toe in as he's catching the ball, then tap the right toe. Just an amazing I mean, one of these things that makes you wonder how NFL players do it. Chris Olave with the play of the game for the Saints offense, catching that touchdown. That was a 29-yard touchdown catch. Let's see. Let me double check on that. I'm sorry, it's just 13 yards. 29 earlier in the drive he caught from Derek Carr after Trevor Penning's penalty had pushed the Saints out of field goal range. 29 yards to Chris Olave, and then he catches the 13-yard touchdown pass on second down. That gave the Saints a 12-7 lead. Another key play that kind of gets lost in all of this, the Saints' two-point conversion. They went empty set on the two-point conversion. Carr threw for Jamal Williams in the flat, and the throw was a little bit wide. Williams kind of had to dive for it. I don't think he was getting into the end zone regardless. It looked like he was going to get stuffed. The Eagles had a couple of defenders over there, but once he had to dive for that pass, it was all over. He got down. He caught the ball, but he was down, I think, outside of the 1 yard line. So really not that close on the two-point conversion. And that, of course, leaves just a 5-point lead. Very dangerous lead in the NFL. Eagles do get the touchdown, and they get their own two-point conversion. So they go up by 3, and then even had the Saints managed a field goal on the final drive, you're only getting to overtime instead of having a chance to win that thing. So lots of bad stuff for the Saints, lots of kind of coming down to earth. And, we talked about it on the Saints Insider podcast all week, and we all picked the Saints to win this game. The Saints were favored to win this game by 2.5, 3 points, depending on where you looked. Looked like they were going to win it by 5. But even had they done that, lots of question marks. It starts with the injuries. T.W. Pearson, Taysom Hill makes the offense click. Too many up-the-middle runs for Kamara. Taysom Hill, he's a big loss. I think the Saints would have been able to weather McCoy or Hill. I think having both of them out really hurt them in a lot of ways. Took a lot of things away from them that they like to do in that running game. And that, of course, made the passing game tougher. Derek Carr had more than half of his pass attempts from play action in the first 2 weeks. This week, I think it was only like 7 play action attempts or something. It was only 4 or 5 late in the game. He might have had another 1 or 2 late, but it was not very many. And part of that is because you're not able to establish the run. All of a sudden, you're in 3rd and long. Play action's not going to have a lot of effect in that situation. So Saints, a lot of question marks. Obviously, you'd rather have the question marks and the injury concerns sitting at 3-0, and you can say, hey, look, even if the worst case scenario happens, we lose the next 2, they're 3-2 coming back home. I mean, everybody would have taken that. Instead, like I say, big game coming in Atlanta next week. Big game. Falcons play on Sunday Night Football tonight to play the Kansas City Chiefs. And so we'll see if the Falcons are also 2-1 coming into that one, or if they're 1-2. Tampa Bay Bucks lost today. Sean Payton's Denver Broncos doing the Saints a favor. They beat up on the Bucks in Tampa today. I think that final was it 26-7? It was 26-7 late. Let's see what the final. Yeah, 26-7 Broncos was the final. So the Buccaneers, who had the upset win in Detroit last week, just like the Saints, they come home and kind of lay an egg. Although they did it to an 0-2 Denver Bronco team that everybody thought they'd beat, probably knocked out whoever's left in survivor pools in that one. So the Bucs are 2-1. Saints are 2-1. No real complaints there from a 30,000-foot perspective. After 3 weeks, you're tied for first place. We'll see if the Atlanta Falcons can make that a 3-way tie tonight. They would have to beat the Kansas City Chiefs to do it. Next week, Saints go to Atlanta, and the Bucs host these Eagles. I think that game is in Tampa. So the Tampa Bay Bucs have a tough game next week, and the Saints, you win in Atlanta, you're 3-1. You're back at least tied for first place. And, I think everything is good again, but some major question marks from this one. And one of them, comment here from Chad, why can't the Saints cover tight ends? It happens all the time. You're not wrong. You're not wrong, man. And we talked about it on the Saints Insider podcast this week, how this Dallas Goedert was the first, real skilled tight end the Saints were going to face last week. Jake Ferguson was out for the Dallas Cowboys with injury. And I believe their third string tight end was out as well. And the first week, not that the Carolina Panthers have very good tight ends anyway, but they were missing their top 2 tight ends because of injury. And so that was not a concern the Saints defense had to worry about. But today, Dallas Goedert goes for 170 yards. So it was not just that 61-yard play at the end, although that almost makes it more head scratching how the Saints did not have someone following Dallas Goedert as he leaked out to the left side of that formation, because the guy had already burned you. I mean, he finished 10 catches for 170 yards. He had 9 catches for 109 yards, 9 catches on 10 targets before that play. So you leave him wide. And Devontae Smith, by the way, prayers up for Devontae Smith. He left this game with a scary looking, we think probably concussion. He was down on the field for a few minutes. He did get up and walk off under his own power. But the Eagles, without their top 2 weapons, they didn't have Devontae Smith, they didn't have A.J. Brown on that final drive, and you had him 3rd and 16. So if you think about it that way, they also didn't have Britton Covey, their 3rd wide receiver. So it was like Jahan Dotson, who's like their 4th wide receiver, and Dallas Goedert. And then Saquon Barkley out of the backfield, but it's 3rd and 16. If Saquon Barkley hits you for 6 or 7 yards, you'll take that. So how do you not cover Goedert there? It's pretty head scratching. If he gets underneath you for a 10-yard gain there, no problem. It's 4th and 6. Clock is either running or the Eagles have to burn their second time out. And even if they pick up the 4th and 6, you're down under a minute to go and you still feel pretty good about your chances. But instead, Dallas got it wide open. Rumbles for 61 yards. And that was that. Saquon Barkley, by the way, 17 carries, 147 yards, 8.6 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. And the long of 65 is the thing that really drives that average up. So the Saints defense, a couple of busts that cost them this game. On the other side of the ball, the main concern, I don't know if there's a main concern. There's a lot of concerns. The injuries to Eric McCoy and Taysom Hill really changed this offense, and they were unable to establish the run. I mentioned the rushing numbers earlier. 29 carries for 89 yards as a team. That's an average of just 3.1 yards on the ground. And this is against an Eagles defense. Those of you who watched the Monday Night Football game against the Falcons know the Falcons, Bijan Robinson gashed this defense. And it was outside zone runs. It was the same thing that the Saints were running. And so even though that's one reason I picked the Saints to win this game, even though I thought it was a letdown spot and kind of a circle the wagon spot for the Eagles, you thought the Saints would be able to run the ball. And when they've run the ball the first 2 weeks, it's opened everything up for them. The Eagles made enough adjustments. The injuries to McCoy and Hill don't help, and the Saints don't run the ball today, and we saw what happened. They had only 6 points until that not final drive, but the late touchdown to Olave, and they finished the game with just 12 in this 15-12 loss. All right, we're going to continue to recap here on the Saints Insider postgame show. It's brought to you by Tulane Doctors. We'll be visited by our guys from the locker room, Jeff Duncan, Rod Walker, Matthew Parrish, Luke Johnson. They'll be out here in a few minutes. We're going to take a quick break here, and Jeff Duncan is actually on his way, so we'll be talking to him right after this break on the Saints Insider postgame show.
Your trusted Tulane doctors are now at East Jefferson General Hospital. Within these walls, you'll find our region's leaders in academic medicine, where state-of-the-art facilities house the innovation powered by Tulane Medicine, where collaborative care and compassion meet, and where our commitment to patient outcomes means a healthier future for our community. Tulane Doctors at East Jeff. When you see the shield, you'll know the future of medicine is here.
Fellas, it's clear why Caesars brought us together. This is the ultimate quarterback roundtable.
I think I know why we're here.
What? Quarterback, high school, Oklahoma.
I thought that was a musical. Garth, I think you're here because when people use Caesars Sportsbook, they earn with Caesars rewards. Things like celebrity chef dining, Vegas vacations, even tickets to your show.
This app is over the top. There's the idea.
Bet with Caesars Sportsbook. Earn Caesars rewards and see your favorite quarterback Garth Brooks in concert.
Hey, you can't throw like that.
All right, welcome back to the Saints Insider postgame show brought to you by Tulane Doctors. Zach Ewing live here at the Caesars Superdome, joined by Jeff Duncan. Jeff, we're just talking off the air. This is kind of what I led with. Even if the Saints had pulled this out, they really would have stolen it. I mean, they did not deserve to win this game today.
Yeah, I mean, it's a heartbreaking loss because it was right there for you, and it felt like you were going to be able to escape with a win and go to 3-0. You'd have been 3-0 for only the 8th time in franchise history. But really, when you just look at the stat sheet and when you watch the game, I think Philly clearly outplayed the Saints in this game. The stats back that up. The Saints had some really big plays on defense, obviously a big play on special teams. But between the end zones, they got kind of dominated by Philadelphia. And I think this is going to be a wake-up call for this team. It's the National Football League, man. It's a week-to-week league, and we saw that today with how Philadelphia kind of won both sides of the trenches, I thought.
Yeah, we were talking about Dallas Goedert. You had the play sheet here, and Saquon Barkley's 65-yard touchdown run was the longest play, but the next 4 longest plays by the Eagles were all passes to Dallas Goedert. He caught 4 passes for more than 22 yards, and it was the same sort of concept where they're running crossing patterns and getting guys lost in coverage that hurt him in the end.
Yeah, I guess if you were going to be disappointed with the Saints defense today, and they played lights out most of the game and kept the Saints in this thing, you'd be disappointed in not being able to defend Dallas Goedert against a Philly offense that was really riddled by injuries. I mean, they were already without A.J. Brown in the game. They lost Devontae Smith late. So that last drive, they were playing with their 3rd, 4th, and 5th receivers, really had no one on the outside to threaten the Saints. So you knew they were going to try and go to Goddard, and they're still able to dial up a 61-yard gain. It really was the backbreaker. So that's disappointing that they were able to really go to the one option that they had. The Saints had no answer for Goddard the whole day. We talked about that on the Saints Insider podcast this week. They hadn't really faced a top tight end because of injuries in the first 2 weeks. And now they're going to have to answer to this at some point because opposing teams are going to see how Goddard thrived against them. And I think they're going to have to figure out a way to hold these tight ends down. It was a problem for them a year ago.
Well, in a lot of ways, this game felt like last year in quite a few ways. I mean, the Saints offense struggles. The defense kind of holds on, gets some takeaways, but ultimately gives up, one too many big plays in the end.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I would say this. I mean, a lot of players saying, they're still confident, and they should be. I mean, this was really felt like a playoff game here today. You got the Eagles A game. I mean, they had a huge contingent of fans here. It was an electric atmosphere. It really did feel like a playoff game, and the Saints held up without Taysom Hill, without Eric McCoy, who's a vital part of their offensive line, really a captain up front. They still stood in there toe-to-toe, not playing their A game today. I just think there's a lot of encouraging things. They got to get some things fixed, but all in all, I mean, you play this game 10 times, I think each team wins 5 of those games.
Yeah, in 30,000-foot view, look, the Saints are 2-1, which I think everyone would have taken before the season if you'd said they'd be 2-1 after 3 games. They go to Atlanta next week for what turns out to be a pretty big game, just like we thought it would be.
Yeah, and look, Sean Payton did the Saints a favor today. The Broncos went down to Tampa. You see what happens in this league. I mean, I'm sure everyone had that marked up for a Bucs victory. It just doesn't happen that way. It's just too competitive right now, and the Saints got some injuries now. They were healthy the first couple of weeks, but they've got to get some of these guys back on the mend because some areas of concern up front with obviously McCoy being out. Hopefully Taysom Hill comes back because he's a key part of what Clint Kubiak likes to do. But all in all, I thought it was a game that the Saints probably got outplayed, had a chance to escape with a win, but probably in the end, the best team today won.
Yeah. Saints lose at 15-12. He's Jeff Duncan. You can read his column. I guess will be posting tomorrow morning on the site. Yeah, tomorrow morning. What you writing about, Jeff? You know yet?
No, I think I'll probably be a little more encouraging. I mean, people might not want to hear that, but I found a lot of good things in this game, even though they did lose.
Yeah, you zig when the people zag, man. That's what we
way
do.
I roll, baby.
All right, thanks, Jeff, and we'll now bring on one of our Times Picayune beat writers. He's Matthew Paris, coming on to the Saints Insider post-game show. Matt, first and foremost, do we have any sort of an update on Eric McCoy? Any sense how serious that might be?
No, not really. DA didn't expand upon it after the game.
They may not even know.
Yeah,
it's you're going to need imaging and all that sort of thing, see how he feels tomorrow. But clearly Saints offense missed Eric McCoy, also missed Taysom Hill today. It was not the same in the run game. It was not the same in short yardage, and that affected everything.
Yeah, I mean, it really did. It was the reason they couldn't sustain drives the way they wanted. They didn't run play action at nearly the volume I think that they preferred. The offense was able to move the ball in crucial situations, especially after they went down and they ended up scoring, but still not what you really wanted to see overall. And I think that's kind of the test for them now is how do they respond to this and how do they get that running game back on track?
Yeah. Obviously, it was encouraging to see them score when they had to, but then the defense breaks down. And Jeff and I were talking about that. Eagles were really down to one weapon that anybody knows. I mean, you can count Saquon Barkley, but in a 2-minute drill, he's not as much of a weapon. And they let Dallas Goedert beat him.
Yeah, they did, and they ran into each other. I mean, that was the thing that couldn't happen there. And Tyrann Mathieu said that they ran that exact same play like 4 or 5 times because they were effective on it. That was what they liked to go to. I think they saw something on film that they realized that it'd be open in the middle of the field. So, we'll see, but it wasn't. It's players are surprisingly like they were down and they weren't angry, but like for as a brutal of a loss, like just in terms of the results
and how it happened.
Yeah, how it happened. Like these guys were pretty poised after the game. So we'll see.
Explain just a little further, if you could, on that Goddard play. Will Harris, I guess, was the guy who was supposed to come over. Did he run into Tyrann, or how did that?
Yeah,
I have to go back and look at the film.
Yeah, I would have to as well. But it seemed like there was a guy running down, trying to make I guess get to the right angle, so like he could cut off Goddard ahead of time because that's like he was headed that way, and I think he ran over to the guys who were supposed to be covering him or bumped him. So it looked like someone on the path bumped it, but I couldn't tell who it was, and I'd have to go back and watch the tape.
But obviously a huge play. Eagles probably go from 10-15% to win that game to 10-15% to lose that game on that one play. I mean, and so that's what happens in the NFL. It's a heartbreaker, but 30,000-foot view, Matt, this team's 2-1. As I said to Jeff, like every fan, I think obviously you love to win them all, but this team was going to face adversity at some point, and now we see how they respond.
Yeah, they will. And that's the thing is like how much of their offensive success over the first 2 games was dictated by game situation, or how much does this offense actually have in it. I thought it was encouraging for the Saints that, once the run game was taken away, they did have some answers. I know Derek Carr's like overall line wasn't that impressive, but I thought he made particularly smart reads, especially diagnosing the blitz. You didn't really see the pressure get to Carr the way it did. When the Eagles line dominated this game, it was a lot more through the run game, but I thought Carr diagnosed things quickly, maybe on the interception a little too quickly because it was just a rip it and throw it down as he was getting pressure. He said he didn't want to take a sack there, but overall I thought he played okay, played well enough for them to win the game, and unfortunately the defense kind of collapsed there on that final drive.
Yeah. It's you're 2-1. You don't want to point too many fingers at one spot when there was clearly some blame to go around. So he's Matthew Paris, and the Saints lose 15-12. We'll let him get back to work and bring on, who are we bringing on? Is Luke next? Luke Johnson, our other Times-Picayune Saints beat writer, coming on to the Saints Insider postgame show. And Luke, let's start at the beginning. Eric McCoy gets hurt in this game. How did that affect the Saints offense?
Well, I mean, it clearly affected them, right? Look, Lucas Patrick is their starting left guard. He shifts over to center. I didn't get a chance to ask him exactly how many center reps he takes in a given week during a regular season practice, but it's probably not much. And you got Oli Udoh coming in at left guard. So right away, that's 2 spots where you're
downgrading
worse than you were at the start. And McCoy is so vital to what these guys do. He's not only the captain of their offensive line, but he's in charge of a lot of stuff in the line of scrimmage. So, I mean, it was a huge loss. And I think it was evident the way the game played out. But I don't think they would have, if Eric McCoy's in there, had 200 rushing yards today. I think Philly had a really good game plan, and they really outplayed these guys. Even though it was a huge loss, I mean, Philly was down its all-pro right tackle and they're starting right guard, and they did pretty okay. So it's something you got to be able to adjust to on the fly if you're the Saints.
Yeah. Clearly, even before McCoy went out, and it was just a few plays, but you could see the Eagles' run defense look better than it did against Atlanta. The Saints weren't finding the holes they did against Dallas. I mean, something had changed. And as the game goes on, the Saints are kind of clinging to this lead, which maybe changes some of the play calling. They did seem to get very conservative at times.
Yeah, and I think this is just part of what their identity is, right? And yes, they were conservative, but they're a team that wants to build everything off the run. And when the run is not working, I think the rest of the offense starts to not work. Yeah, none of the play action stuff was really hitting today.
Didn't even try it a lot of the time.
They didn't try a lot of it, and then when they did, they got pressured. So it was kind of a house of cards today. To where they didn't really get anything going until that one drive in the fourth quarter, where even then they had to overcome a big 15-yard penalty that set them back back behind the 50, behind where they even started the drive from. So it was a tough slog for them. And look, they were going to get something like this where they were going to have to adjust. They didn't do it in game. We'll see next week if they're able to adjust to what they saw and come out with a better plan next week.
I was going to kind of put you on the spot just based on the few conversations you had in the locker room. Now, does it feel like the Saints offense is confident that this isn't a same old situation from last year, that they can adjust?
Yeah, I think so. I think they still believe they're a good team. I don't think one game is going to change their belief in that. And frankly, it doesn't for me either. We saw them have bad games last year. We saw them have really good games last year. I think the good is going to be a little bit more consistent with this team today, notwithstanding. Yeah, that was a defense that was vastly underperforming in the first two games. They have way too many good players to play the way they did. And, I thought the Saints would be able to have success, and they didn't. The Eagles' good players played really well today. Jalen Carter had a really good game today.
Yeah.
Jordan Davis had a really good game for them. C.J. Gardner-Johnson was talking a lot of smack, and he made a lot of good plays for them. He deserves to talk it after this game.
On the other side of the ball, Saints defense obviously played very well. They had a shutout through three quarters. A couple of takeaways and curious decisions by Nick Sirianni, shall we say, contribute to that.
Yeah.
But eventually that defense wilted in the form of some big plays. I think the Eagles had 5 that were 30 yards or longer, including obviously the 2 big ones, the touchdown and then the Goddard bomb. Did the defense let one get away? Did they?
I think that's fair to say. The 2 explosive plays. I mean, that's what I'm going to be writing about after this. That's going to be what defines this game. 65-yard touchdown by Saquon Barkley where he goes untouched, and a 61-yarder by Dallas Goedert where Will Harris and Marshawn Lattimore collide, and they can't bring him down. That play was on 3rd and 16, and he's really their only pass catching threat left in the game. Like you can't have those type of mistakes in crucial situations. So like the offense has to play better, no doubt. I mean, this game is on them, but I don't think the defense is going to come away from this game feeling great. They gave up a lot of yards, they gave up a lot of explosives, and that's something they can't do.
Both those plays were from the 35-yard line. It just occurred to me. It was the same exact yard marker. Kind of wrapping things up, Luke. On one hand, you could say, well, the Saints are 2-1 after 3 games, and they're at least at par, if not better, than what you expected through 3 games. On the other hand, boy, you stop a 3rd and 16, and then the 4th down, and you're 3-0, and you're really flying high. I mean, so what's your feeling?
I mean, I don't think my overall feelings on this team have changed very much after today. I mean, granted, those first 2 weeks were awesome, but I don't think anybody was truly expecting it to look like that over the course of the season. I don't know if I was expecting them to only have, 6 points going into the fourth quarter today?
Yeah, no, right? 3.
3-0. Fourth quarter. I don't think I expected that either, but they were at some point going to come back to earth a little bit offensively. And I thought it was all about how they adjusted to what defenses do to them now that defenses actually have a beat on what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So his first 2 games, I mean, that was the first 2 times we've ever seen the Saints offense under Clint Kubiak. So they are going to have to make some adjustments, but I do feel like we are going to see it. I think those first 2 weeks are a little bit closer to what they are offensively than this week. But we'll see next week against Atlanta. I mean, that's going to be a litmus test right there, because this is the first time that we've seen a defense come in with a really good plan for how to slow down this particular offense, and the Saints weren't able to match it. So if the book is out on them, we'll know next week.
Yeah. I mean, it's week 4, but it's a big game for week 4 in that it's a divisional opponent. It's a team that was favored to win the division, and it's kind of a measuring stick now. So.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, he's Luke Johnson, beat writer for the Times-Picayune. You can read his work at NOLA.com/Saints. And we'll wrap things up here with Rod Walker, Times-Picayune columnist, and he'll be our last guest on the postgame show. He's getting a little wash of water there.
Yeah.
It's like you're in the corner and you need your corner man to give you a splash before you come into the arena.
Hope I can make it through that coffee, man. I've been nonstop.
That voice is giving you trouble, but we'll excuse you the cough. Let's see. Jim Derry commenting. He's homesick. Get better, Jim. Said the O-line was horrendous. No sugarcoating it. I'll start there like I started with Luke. Once Eric McCoy goes out and you have to shift things around, luckily for the Saints, Cesar Ruiz only missed 1 play when he went out later in the game. But yeah, you take a question mark and downgrade it at 2 spots, and we finally saw it cost the Saints today.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anybody on this offensive line you don't want to, that you want to have out there, I mean, it's Eric McCoy. I mean, he's that guy. For him to go out in the first possession, I think it kind of changed everything. The offense, they got into some 3rd and longs today, which is something that we haven't seen. I through the first two games, and it all starts up front. Obviously, they couldn't run the ball like we had been seeing them do it. Didn't have Taysom Hill today. I mean, it's just a combination of that. So, not to make excuses, because that's
yeah. We talk about Clint Kubiak's game plan, and he looks like a genius, and he's the next head coaching candidate in the NFL after 2 weeks of success. Game plans look a lot better when they get executed, and then when they don't, and when the running game's not working and setting everything else up, they don't look so great.
Yeah, I mean, that's I tweeted, it was one of the plays, something happened, and I tweeted something out, and somebody was like, oh, what a horrible play call. But if the play works, it's not a hard, it was just didn't execute. And so just a bad all-around day for the offense. And I thought the defense kept them in the game a little bit. They were kind of bending but not breaking. Had a pitch to shutout through the first, however long it was. But they gave up a bunch of yards, a lot of explosive plays. So just not a really good day for this team.
Yeah, and I mean, despite that, it's 12-7 Saints, less than 2 minutes to go, less than a minute and a half to go, 3rd and 16 on their own 35 for the Eagles. And it's like, man, if you could have escaped with that win and fixed these problems after a win, it would have been a lot different feeling in this building.
Yeah, I'm kind of writing about this, but I mean, this is a chance to really get this city going. I mean, you had the atmosphere you wanted. You had Drew Brees here. You had Mark Ingram here. It was an electric atmosphere, and just didn't come out with the win, which is kind of disappointing on a day like this because everything seemed to be going right coming into this game.
All right, and I'll end with this gut feeling. Is this a throwback to last year after a 2-week blip, or is this team closer to what it was the first 2 weeks, and this was the outlier?
No, I think it's closer to what it was in the first 2 weeks, but we'll learn in the next 2 weeks. We'll definitely find out, because this game in Atlanta next weekend is really big, and Atlanta's going to be fired up too. And the Saints sort of need to bounce back from this. I mean, they don't need to, you don't need to see 2-0 all of a sudden slide into 2-2 and could possibly go to 2-3.
Then you play Kansas City. Yeah.
Right. So, and then you got the Bucs after that. So it's a really tough stretch, but we're going to learn a lot about this team as far as their ability to bounce back and face adversity. They faced some adversity in this game, and I felt like they kind of bounced back from it, but at the end, they just came up short.
Yep. So the Saints fall to 2-1, and like you said, Rod, I mean, Atlanta next week, like it's week 4. Can't be that big of a game, but we'll see what Atlanta does tonight on Sunday Night Football against Kansas City. But it could be a team you're tied for first place with. Atlanta's schedule gets very easy in the second half of the season, and then the Saints go from Atlanta to Kansas City, Tampa Bay at home, Denver on a short week. Like, this thing starts to kind of slide into worrisome territory fast if you don't win that game.
Yeah, but for me, I mean, I think when you beat Dallas last week like you did, I think that gave you a little cushion, because I don't think any of us thought the Saints would be 3-0 3 weeks into this season. I know I did. I mean, if you'd have told me 2-1, I think I'd have been okay with that.
Oh yeah, I think most people would. And you were the one. I got to remind you again. 3-2 means amen. So you escaped the amen cover of the Times-Picayune for one more week.
Yes, I got 2 weeks to get one win. Yeah.
All right, he's Rod Walker. Norman Bell is our cameraman. Spencer Urquhart, our producer, who actually just dropped this fun fact. Zach Bond led the Eagles with 13 tackles today. So
I think Chauncey had like 8. So I checked their report in the game. They had combined for like 22 tackles.
C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Zach Bond had good days for the Eagles defense, and not a good day for the Saints offense. Not a good day for the Saints in the end. They lose it 15-12. Our thanks to Tulane Doctors, our sponsor. As I mentioned, Spencer Urquhart is our producer. Norman Bell, our cameraman. Also, thanks to Luke Johnson, Matthew Paris, Jeff Duncan. I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching the Saints Insider post-game show.